imagination and fantasy.
Yeah.
There's so much imagination, there's so much fantasy and flair. Imagination and flair. Lack a bit of imagination and fantasy. Imagination and fantasy.
Yeah.
There's so much imagination, there's so much fantasy and flair. Imagination and flair. Lack a bit of imagination and fantasy.
Yeah. Good evening, Sokkah Twitter, Australia, YouTube, the world, whoever watches this. Good evening, it's Joe. Trent, unfortunately, has soccer training tonight, so he misses out. But tonight, or today, whenever you watch it, I'm joined by Joe Devine from Tifo Football, The Athletic, whatever you want to call it. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Just wanted to say one thing, just to quote Alex and Seb on the Tifo Football podcast. I like to say, hello, Joe.
Hello, Joe. Yes.
So I just wanted to sneak that in all week. How are you, firstly?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm on holiday at the moment, but as you can imagine, there's not really much to do without being able to leave your house. So I'm glad to have a podcast to record, put it that way.
Yeah, this is great. It's lunchtime where you are now. Have you had lunch? Are you planning on eating lunch after? What's the deal there?
I just got out of bed.
Even better. So what do you have?
Yeah.
Has breakfast been served? What's going on there?
This is the first thing I'm doing since I stood up.
You've rolled out of bed. Like, you actually messaged us saying, oh, like, I'm running 2 minutes late. But
yes.
no,
I got up,
in.
I had a cigarette. I talked to my neighbor about the COVID vaccine. He didn't want to have it. I told him he should. And then I came to my computer and now we're doing this.
Was that the AstraZeneca? Or the Oxford one? It's going around now.
He didn't say. He just he said people have been telling him conspiracy theories about them, and to clear up any confusion, they're all absolutely fine. So everyone should just have whatever they're given. Yeah,
like I saw a tweet from Jeremy Clarkson the other day, and like he got the AstraZeneca one, and he said like his blood is still liquid, so it must work. So I think if I can trust anyone, it's Amazon's Jeremy Clarkson.
Sure, very trustworthy guy, definitely.
Yeah, your neighbor, like I bet he wouldn't have voted for Brexit as well, would he?
Almost certainly, but I don't know. I haven't actually seen him say anything about that. Although I would imagine at least the character that he uses to write his columns in the Telegraph probably would have voted for Brexit.
He doesn't have like
he didn't.
He doesn't have a big Union Jack flagpole, does he, or anything like that? I hope not.
Probably. It does Jeremy Clarkson not really transcend it fully to Australia? Do you see him over there as just a kind of fun TV host?
I keep tabs on like my UK like pop culture and like the media, but yeah, like Jeremy Clarkson 100% would have voted for Brexit. But I feel like he's smart enough. Sure. He's smart enough to know like that a vaccine is a vaccine. I hope.
Sure, I would hope so. Yeah, I think I hope everyone knows that the vaccine is the vaccine.
Yeah,
that's the only way I'm going to be able to leave my house. Yeah.
So Joe, it's weird calling somebody else Joe because my name's Joe as well. Just thought I'd say that. So it's a strange thing for me. You also have a podcast, the Tifo Football Podcast. Fun story. Do you know the origins of I'm guessing Tifo comes from the Italian term tifosi for fans. Is that right?
Yeah. And also, I think it is about the art and the choreography in the stadium.
That as well. Hence the cartoons, hey?
Yeah. It's smart. It's
Learn
clever,
something new every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fun fact, tifosi, which is like fans. That comes from the word like typhoid or the disease typhoid, because back in the 1900s, when soccer was first getting like played in Italy and fans were going, like the people who saw the spectators getting worked up about the game thought they had typhoid, and hence tifosi and then tifo.
I did not know about the typhoid, but that's good. Although I do associate large groups of people with illness, so
yeah, especially
kind of
now.
For me.
So really,
I'm going to close my curtains so that you can see me, because there's But you keep talking.
Oh, you got earphones. But yeah, if it wasn't for typhoid, then the Tifo podcast or Tifo football wouldn't be a thing, I suppose.
No, probably not. No, I'm glad to thank all the people who sacrificed their lives to typhoid so that we could exist. Is that the right thing? That's the right thing to say?
I guess so. Like, is typhoid still a thing? I'm not too sure about diseases apart from like Corona now, but yeah,
sure,
I'm sure sacrifices were made along the way, but I think it was worth it.
yeah.
So like with Tifo, it's like huge. Like I think the YouTube channel has like 1 million views. Tell us your story about like how you started there and like how it's evolved over like the last few years.
Well, it started, I don't know, about 4 years ago. A chap called Neil started a company called Umaxit Football, and the aim was to produce this app that allowed people to play a predictor game. So it wasn't gambling; it was free. You didn't pay to do it, but the idea was that you correctly identified 6 outcomes, and if you did, you would sort of win a share in the winnings pot for whatever that week was. And a couple of people were hired to sort of design content to sit around that in order to bring people towards the app. So Seb, who works for Tifo now, was one of those people as an editor. There was an editorial website, and the company hired writers to write, blogs, I suppose. To bring people in, and I was hired alongside Alex Stewart as the sort of social media manager for Umaxit, and we shared responsibilities on Twitter and Facebook and those sorts of places for about 6 weeks until Alex got bored and left, and then I took over the job full time. Alex, he came back eventually after I'd made it cool, but he waited until then, obviously. But basically, like this guy Neil, nice guy. He sort of paid me a full-time salary to do a job which really wasn't a full-time job.
It's always a good start as well.
Yeah, it worked quite well. Paid. But also, I felt guilty because I wasn't, there just wasn't enough work to do, and so I came up with the idea of trying to produce some videos, just to add to the content that we were releasing. We tried a few different things. Most of them weren't very successful, and were retrospectively dreadful ideas. But then we had a conversation about how we could sort of match the tone with what was being written at the time on the site, and some of it was fairly dry, and some explainers and that kind of thing. How could we use that to create videos? And that's when, experimenting with that, I came up with the idea for the sort of animated explainer video, which obviously existed already and was something that was being used successfully on YouTube and elsewhere in other arenas. But this thing didn't really seem to exist in sports yet, or at least in football that I was aware of. And so we tried that a couple of times, and I wrote these sort of kind of faux academic scripts about psychological concepts and football players, and they just did extraordinarily well straight off the bat, like much better than anything else that we'd ever done before. It was clear that the YouTube algorithm loved them for whatever reason, and that was great. And so we gradually started to produce more of them, and from that point, it was took quite a long time, but over the period of about 18 months or so, it became obvious that this made more commercial sense for us to focus on this area than the rest of the company did. So we pivoted our aims and became solely video. And at that point, we've rebranded as Tifo, which felt like it sort of suited what we were doing a little bit more. Thanks to Typhoid, of course. And that was probably a couple of maybe 3 years ago we rebranded.
Yeah, because I think. Well, you can go.
No, that kind of well, it doesn't bring me up to now, but I don't know if you were going to ask any further questions. I'll let you talk now.
Yeah, this is my podcast. Nah.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, because like I was like, I think the first time I saw Tifo would have been like you've been in my radar, in my subscriptions for like a year or however long now. But like, it's like the first thing you see is that like mellowy shade of yellow just plastered everywhere. Was that there from the start? Because like as a Tifo, you automatically think of like, for me personally, it's like that shade of yellow. Like, how big a part was that? I don't know, it's a weird question, but when I think of Tifo, I think of that weird shade of yellow.
Yeah, it's a funny one because you sort of think about branding, when you work for a company like this, and your aim, I have my sister Alice is our managing illustrator. She writes our style guide. She works on some of the videos, and we've talked a lot about Tifo's brand, because obviously we are an inherently visual brand, so it's important for us, right? But we have many of these kind of highfalutin conversations, and I spend a lot of time thinking, like, does it even fucking matter? You know, is anybody going to notice? Like, I've got some words that I associate with us as a sort of outfit, and you know, this is a joke. It's ridiculous, but I think it is probably important. And yes, the yellow was there from the beginning. From the rebrand, the yellow was there, and we worked with this great company in Bristol who helped design the website for us when we rebranded as Tifo, and it was a really useful experience. Chatting with a guy called Piers who worked there. I think they're called Atomic Smash.
Not Piers Morgan,
name.
I hope.
Not Piers
No.
Morgan, thank fuck.
Yeah,
no, Piers Ticknell, his name was. And he asked us all these questions about who we thought the audience were for this. And it was, you know, those sorts of things kind of, I think, would have made me cringe before. But actually having the conversation, you can see how useful it is to help define what our goals are. And, it transpires that Tifo is the perfect name for us, because the aim is for us to provide a service for football fans, you know, and it's not hugely predatory in the way that many modern companies are. There's a lot in there that defines us as, I suppose that's the best way of putting it, is attempting to at least create a service for people. And as part of that process, we also picked a couple of colors which we felt best suited what we were doing. That yellow is one of them. I'm happy to say that I chose it without really being a designer.
So what does the yellow symbolize?
I don't know. I mean, all I can tell you is what it symbolizes to me, which is it's sort of it's happy, it's non-threatening, it is mellow. It symbolizes urine, of course.
Yep.
And other than that, it's just it's also, there are very few teams that play in yellow. I mean, obviously we have like Watford and half of Norwich, and there are places that exist. The Socceroos, sure, yeah. I mean, I wasn't really counting Australia. Australia is yellow to me, actually. That's the point, isn't it? That feels, it always seems yellow. But no, I don't. I mean, I think it's sort of non-partisan, and it's just quite nice, isn't it? It's just a nice color. I like yellow.
Like you see red everywhere, like especially in England, like Liverpool, United. If you have like black and white stripes, Juventus, but yellow. I can't think of a club team who is yellow.
It's Watford. That's kind of
but like they have
I'm
like
sure
black
there are
as
others.
well, though. So
sure, and they're sort of more
slide.
orange yellow, you know. So they don't really. I don't think they really count. Half of Norwich, basically.
Yeah. Oh, Norwich. That's what's his name? Alan Partridge territory there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm
is.
a massive fan of that. I was in London in December, and I think I spent half my time there just watching like BritBox, just watching all the Partridge shows. It's a story for another time when we can chat to Steve Coogan. I think that's right. But even with like the Sokkah Pod, like I don't even know, like, cause I've done like I do all like the social medias and everything, and I don't even know why I picked blue. Like I think it just suited the background we had, and I was going, fuck it. But like the most hated team in Australia is like Sydney FC, and like they're that exact same of blue, like same as like Melbourne City, who are like owned by like Manchester City's people, and they're like a light blue as well. So I think I might need to change
the most hated podcast in Australia, or
Tim Cahill thinks that, or that's his opinion.
Well, it suits then, doesn't it? It's fine.
Yeah, I'll take it. But obviously, like you do like the Tifo football. I looked on your LinkedIn the other day. You're the managing video editor. Is that right?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Even better. So obviously Tifo football, they're also associated with the Athletic, who are like, they're like world-class subscription-based news service. And I actually forgot, before I started the show, I was going to start it. This show is proudly brought to you by the Athletic. You can join the Athletic now for £1 a week. Is that the current deal?
Is for me, I think so. Is it really brought to you by the Athletic?
No, I just wanted to say that because I thought it was funny. But
Oh,
yeah,
I got excited for you. I thought you'd been sponsored, but no, apparently not.
no, we asked.
Although, having taken this opportunity, if you visit theathletic.com/Tifo, you can avail yourselves of a £1 a week offer. I think it's £1 a week. I don't actually know.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, it's great. Go on, Joe.
Yeah, which is essentially $2 Australian a month, a week. Yeah, who knows?
Right. Sure.
But yeah, since we're talking about sponsors. The Sokkah Podcast is brought to you by Streamgate Live Streaming Australia and Arrow Sport. So if you need an event live streamed in Australia, head to Streamgate, or you can, if you need teamwear made for soccer teams, cricket teams, polos, whatever, head to Arrow Sport, and I'll link our pre-recorded video here.
This episode of the Sokkah Podcast is sponsored by our official sponsor, Streamgate Live Streaming Australia. They've been live streaming since 2008, specialising in custom-built stream pages, pay-per-view and multi-language streaming. They can cater to large online conferences with multiple simultaneous streams and destinations, including all social media channels, servicing clients Australia-wide. Go to streamgate.com.au or find them on Instagram. And this podcast is also especially sponsored by arrowsport.com.au. If you want to grab yourself special custom-made soccer jerseys, polos, whichever team where you want, visit arrowsport.com.au. Basically, prices are $55 for a jersey, fully customised with name, number, or $70 for customised jersey, shorts, and shipping isn't included. That's arrowsport.com.au.
What's teamwear?
Oh, they make
you mean like clothes?
Yeah,
and
like
stuff?
soccer kits. Yeah, like if you have a five-a-side team, that kind of thing.
Cool.
I had a shirt from them, but yeah, we gave it away on Twitter. To one of our subscribers won it. Good on him. So how do things work out like with like Tifo and the Athletic? Because we were talking before how who was it? The Athletic actually bought Tifo. So all those $1 subscriptions actually go somewhere. So like, how has that like impacted Tifo?
It's been great. They bought us about a year ago, and the team still works here, so it's no difference in makeup. They pretty much leave us to get on with what we want to do. Obviously our aims are essentially the same, which is to grow the channel. In doing so, we also want to highlight that the Athletic exists. So that's why you'll see the little notifications before and after a video. But it's fantastic, like we existed before in a sort of constant cycle of like, holy fuck, we're going to run out of money and everyone's going to lose their jobs towards the end of every month. And then like we would sell something and it's going to be fine for 2 weeks, and then we'd all panic again. And I can tell you, Joe, that's not fun. That's no way to live. And so at the bare minimum, the very least, job security, delightful. Thank you, The Athletic. And also, there's your dog. What dog have you got?
It's a Jack Russell.
Oh, a little terrier, a little
yippy
dog.
Yeah, he's named after Ciro Immobile, the Lazio striker.
Right, great.
Don't ask me why.
Is the full name or just Ciro?
Just Ciro. I feel like yelling Ciro Immobile in a park. I think that might raise a few too many eyebrows.
But if he does something naughty, do you use the full name?
I'm not sure he responds to Immobile. I think Ciro is just the max of his attention span, I might say.
It's all in the tone, isn't it? But yeah, okay. I mean, it's fantastic. Yeah, and we work with literally like hundreds of fantastic journalists. Anybody that we need to speak to, any information that we need, any additional resources, it's all there. And also, broadly speaking, it's, I suppose the best thing about it, the reason why it's great, is because previously Tifo really relied on advertising to make its money, which kind of sucks because with some clients particularly, you have to sort of go to extreme lengths to earn your way, and it's a bit of a hollow existence, whereas now we can say that we are supporting something which is supported itself by subscriptions. People, over 1 million people now paying to read very high quality journalism. That's what supports us. It just feels a lot nicer and also more secure.
Yeah. And what's it like to have like access to like all those resources that like the Athletic do have, whether it be like journalists or say like insiders here and there?
It's great. It's great. I mean, the hardest thing is remembering what you are and aren't allowed to say, because there's a lot of like off the record stuff which is discussed amongst the journalists. Can't count the number of times I'll see something and I'll go, oh, that would be great to put in a video. And then I'll read on and go, oh, God, I can't say that until, I've got to wait.
It's even funny with us. We've spoken to like heaps of players in like Australia, and then like we'll chat off camera. And then, like after just like speechless, you're like, wow, like that's how things are. But just a part of the media, I suppose. Is that what we are in a way?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
You also write as well. So I think the latest video on the Tifo, or one of the latest ones, is about VAR. Do you hate it, Joe? Do you love it? Are you indifferent? What's the spiel?
I hate it. The spiel is, I don't hate it. I understand it. I understand why it's necessary. I understand why it's come about. I find it boring to watch. I know that's sort of a bit of a tried narrative, but I don't care for the crosshairs on the offside replays. I'm not really interested if somebody was a half centimetre offside. If that's something that you need to decide for the outcome of this part of the game, that's fine. But there was a fantastic moment I think I was watching European football. It must have been the Champions League. And it was a game over here in the UK. It was on BT Sport. And the commentary team kept making reference to the fact that the local editor wasn't showing the sort of the scenes or the angles that they would not ordinarily show in the UK. But it was fantastic because there was this whole kind of 2.5 minute period where there was a VAR check ongoing, but the director didn't show the VAR scene. So you weren't watching the replay. You couldn't see the crosshairs. You were just waiting in the same way that the players were waiting. And the camera was sort of cutting between the goalkeeper or the defender who had committed the apparent offence, the striker who was waiting to hear if he had a penalty or not, and mainly the referee who was just sat there with his finger in his ear waiting for someone to tell him what to do for an extremely long time. And I think I talked about it on the Tifo podcast at the time, but watching it, it was very entertaining. It was like a incredible melodrama within it's like a 3-act play in 2 minutes. And so that kind of thing is interesting to me. I suppose everyone watches football for different reasons, but personally, watching the crosshairs and the lines, I'm not particularly interested in that.
It's like watching,
don't really care.
It's like watching a math lecture, really. Like where they're drawing the lines. It's like watching like a geometry lesson at like school or university. Like it's boring.
Yeah. Well, also I would say that I think the first thing to consider is that the one of the reasons that they've been brought in is because there's a huge amount of money basically on the line, and inaccurate refereeing decisions can cause a lot of upset and a lot of financial hurt to football clubs, most of which are owned and represented by people who have a lot of money and a lot of influence. So it was obviously going to change. But the other thing to say is that people who care about refereeing decisions are club fans, right? They care when it affects their club. They don't really care when it happens to anybody else. And it often becomes the sort of major talking point after games, I think partly because the producers of those shows are aware that the fans of that specific club are going to care and are going to want to hear about it. So it's a sort of appeasing measure. It's also something that fills time when there's not else a lot to talk about. But ultimately, does anyone really care that much? Football didn't stop or die before VAR was introduced. It was irritating when these sorts of things happened that affected you and your team, but you didn't give a shit when it happened elsewhere in the league, right? It didn't matter to you at all. In fact, it was kind of funny. So I sort of think, from my perspective, what I get out of watching football is I enjoy the sort of narratives of it. I enjoy those little moments, particularly of the broadcast, like the one I just described. I don't really care if it's working the way it's supposed to work. I don't really care if something's gone wrong. For me, that's sort of part of the fun, or at least it doesn't detract from the fun. So I suppose it's sort of individual to what people take out. Like, what do you watch football for?
It depends, like the reason why I'm watching it, because like my local team is Perth Glory in Perth, and if I'm at the stadium, VAR is like the bane of my existence, because
Sure.
whenever like the ball, like there's a goal, instead of celebrating straight away, now there's that little shred of doubt just at the bottom like of your heart, and like now you don't want to celebrate all out now, just in case like you count your chickens before they hatch. But then if you do wait and then it is a goal, then you've lost all that emotion because too much time has passed,
and that's
the
a very
moment's
important
gone.
moment, right? Because there's very few goals in football, like comparative to other sports.
Yeah, it's that
so those
split
kind of
second. moments
they're very important to the experience of watching. Particularly, I know from watching, like watching a team that you support or that you're fond of, the result massively affects your mood in a completely different way than just watching ordinary football. Two teams that you're not interested in, and it really can, as you say, it can come down to that one moment within 90 minutes. That's what people are watching for most of the time when they're watching their own team. Is that one moment, and if that's sort of held hostage by technology, I just don't see the point. Basically, I think it's kind of. I think it misunderstands what people like about football, and it's sort of. I think that really happens because, modern football, particularly at a top level, is ultra capitalist, right?
Yeah.
It's. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it literally is all about money and success, and I feel that the aims of the people who guide the game are very different to the
fans,
the aims of the people who watch the game. There's been a lot of talk about Andrea Agnelli.
I was just about
Juventus
to
chairman.
mention him. Like I don't know. I think I was a Juventus fan. Now, kind of fallen out of love with the club. Just so like it feels like a Fortune 500 company in a way. I feel like
and I think that makes sense to you. Like it should feel like that, because I don't question his authenticity at all. I believe that Agnelli believes that this is the right thing to do. We talk specifically about Champions League restructuring after 2024-25. Also, the talk of European Super League is never very far away. There was a sort of a very strange idea floated a couple of weeks ago about the prospect that teams within the Champions League couldn't buy players off each other to protect the rosters that they have.
They could only buy players like from like the league below, which is just insane. I don't.
Doesn't work for anybody, I don't think.
Maybe I'm just out of touch and I don't like change, and I don't see it. I don't know.
But I think basically these things work for some people, and they make, depending on your position, and considering Agnelli's position specifically, these things probably make sense if you are Andrea Agnelli, if you are in his position. I don't question that at all. I just think there has been very little stopping and thinking about what football actually serves. What is the point of this? Why do millions and millions of people gather weekly to watch men kick a ball? When you think about it, to take a step back and look at it, you think this is the fucking stupidest thing I've ever seen. It doesn't make any sense. It is extremely abstract. Who cares? The stakes are all imaginary. It's not a thing. It doesn't matter.
We've all just put value in it for one reason or another. Now it's a worldwide
there's no peril. There's no peril. In the olden days, someone had to die for you to care. You go back to the days of the Colosseum. If the gladiators didn't die at the tooth of the lion, the fans were furious. They wanted to see blood. They were baying for blood. But in football, there's no fucking stakes other than the ones that we put upon it, and nobody is stopping to consider what those are and thinking that maybe watching crosshairs on a video replay screen isn't necessary for the value, to reflect or to embolden the values that we've all put into stupid sport that we watch.
Exactly. Like just touching on Andrea Agnelli as well. Like I read just recently a biography about his grandfather, who was like the famous chairman of Juventus for like years and years, and like nothing has changed in that family. Like that man was like so motivated by money. Like during like the Falklands War, he was like selling like Fiats to the UK, like in his Fiat company. Then he had a subsidiary selling like weapons to Argentina. So like the man, like he didn't care what purpose it was serving, just money essentially. But yeah, now that's more fit into Juventus, and like, yeah, it feels weird because like it feels like an ex-girlfriend in a way, Juventus. Because like growing up, I love like Del Piero when he moved to Australia, and I met him at the airport. That was like awesome. And now, in like space like 10 years, the club's changed so much, and it's like so disheartening to see. So that's why like now I love all these like Italian provincial teams because like they're just happy to be in Serie A in a way, which is kind
You
of
went to meet Del Piero at the airport.
Yeah, when I was like 10.
Can we examine that for a minute? How many people were there? Were there many people there?
So it was in Perth. So pretty much like you had a lot of like hardcore like Italy fans. So I think there would have been like 35 or 40. And he just like stopped and got a photo with like everyone, signed everyone's stuff. It was like legit, like exactly what you thought of like Del Piero. That was like him in person.
Wow. I feel like the people who go to airports to meet someone, those people are lunatics. You know, you must be like a football lunatic, right?
I feel like now, like I wouldn't probably do it now because I'm like 22 and like I have a job. Like I'm not taking annual leave for that. But now, obviously, now in Australia, I'm wearing. Oh, you don't remember the West Ham player Alessandro Diamanti?
The name rings a bell, but no, not specifically. No.
Yeah, so yeah, he's like equipped like the only Italian like in the A League now at the moment. He's like he just gives out the most positive vibes ever. Always like he plays with a smile on his face, and is just honestly one of those players. He's just like fun to watch. Like he's not like the greatest like speed wise or anything, but his passes, his technique are just out of this world. And I think like he's like the next player I want to meet. And I think after that, I'm done with like that phase of my life, getting excited about individuals at airports at least.
You should invite him on the podcast.
We tried to get, it's funny. So Western United, I'm actually wearing their shirt. They've actually never played in Perth, and they've been in the A League now for 2 years because of COVID reasons. But yeah, later this year, I've got some contacts there. Yeah, try my best. But yeah, like VAR, like I have two proposed changes to it, or like two tweaks to it. Like I want your opinion on. The first one is, so it goes to VAR. So, but the tweak is it becomes a little bit like Millionaire Hot Seat or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and the captain of the team gets to phone a friend and get his opinion on what the call should be.
Sure. Okay, I've spotted one flaw in your plan.
Yeah.
If the captain's phoning their friend, will their friend not always side with the captain? Do they need to have a sort of FIFA appointed or nominated neutral party, a famous celebrity different for each game?
Make it a celebrity. Like, don't even make it
David Mitchell.
Don't even make it a friend anymore. Just make it a weird celebrity, like spin a wheel.
Sure.
Call a celebrity.
Julian Clary. Yeah.
Easy. Get Jeremy Clarkson on board.
Sure. He'd be expensive, but I'm sure he'd do it. Yeah. Difficult. I don't know whether he'd tell the truth, but he would say something.
Especially if Chelsea's playing. Second rule change, or the second tweak to VAR that I want your opinion on. No VAR in the last 15 minutes of a game. Just so it just flows, like there's no 96 minutes where it's gone to VAR and the game depends on it. And you still get that.
Can I make a different suggestion along the same lines? I'm just adapting yours. VAR jeopardy, where you don't know whether the VAR is actually running in this period of the game or not. It would be 45 and 45. Half the game it's on, half the game it's off, and it's sort of randomly decided.
I like that.
Which minutes it counts and which it doesn't.
I reckon we can go to FIFA with that.
It'd be very open to manipulation, I think. But, who cares? Everyone loves match fixing. Yeah. It's fine.
I think the more VAR becomes like a game show, the better, I think.
Mm-hmm. Sure, something to keep me interested. Absolutely.
Yeah, then you can have like spin-offs as well. You can have like replays during the day. Like,
yeah.
I feel like FIFA love money. They would love that idea, surely.
They would love it. I think you should write to them.
I think I might. Yeah, I'll find some spare time on the weekend. Do that. But obviously, Sokkah Podcast, we're an Australian podcast. Australia, we haven't had the greatest crop of plays in England in the last 10 or so years. I just wanted to get your opinion, Joe, on some Aussies who have played in the Premier League. Obviously, Tim Cahill, Harry Kewell, Mark Schwarzer, Tony Popovich, maybe. Do they ring any bells for you?
The first three do. Who's Tony Popovich? His name rings a bell.
He played for Crystal Palace back in the day. Defender.
My football knowledge before sort of 2010 isn't very good, so don't remember.
Yeah,
But the other
yeah.
players, wasn't Mark Schwarzer, was he the oldest ever Premier League player, I think?
I think at
He
one
played
stage, yeah,
until
because
he was
he's also
40.
the first player to win 2 Premier Leagues back to back without playing a game. He did that at Leicester
Right.
and at Chelsea.
That is some record. That's a record you don't want as a footballer, I think. That's into 2 different clubs he did that.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that is impressive, isn't it? I've always liked him and his Australian appeal. He reminded me of the sort of Australian version of Edwin van der Sar in the sense that his greying was very dignified in his hair. You know what I mean? He looked like a cool, sort of tall, student man.
Yeah.
You familiar with him?
Now, obviously, Tim Cahill has a special part on our podcast.
Yes, you were telling me.
Yeah, so obviously, like the 2022 World Cup was essentially between Qatar and Australia, and obviously, like Qatar's got it on the reasons don't matter why, everyone kind of knows. But yeah, Tim Cahill's now an ambassador for the Qatar World Cup, and
Right.
someone on the podcast, not me, it was me, kind of said he was a bit of a traitor to Australia, and we like clipped it, put it on like Twitter and everything. Then like an old journalist.
Hold on. Did you at him on
No,
Twitter?
we
when you
didn't. We
clipped
didn't.
it? No, okay. That's better then. That's
Yeah.
okay.
So what? Like a journo picked it up and said, "You guys are a disgrace to the legend," and like I don't know, any publicity is good publicity. So we just ran with it. And then
Sure.
it turns out like his brother retweeted it saying, "Have some respect." Da 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 da. And then we try to look on his profile and it says like you are blocked by Tim Cahill. But that's quite a common thing in Australia. He's actually like infamous for blocking people on Twitter. Like you can just
Australians are, or Tim Cahill is.
Tim Cahill is infamous for blocking people. It's like common knowledge in Australia.
I think you were saying it's like a cultural thing, like Australian people commonly block each other on Twitter. It's just specifically Tim Cahill.
Yes, exactly. But no, he's an awesome player. Did amazing things for Australia. But yeah, ambassador for the Qatar World Cup, which I'm not a fan of.
Well, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
These things are complicated, I think. I don't know. It's hard to say. My opinion on Qatar sort of changes by the day. I wrote a video the early days of Tifo talking about the number of migrant deaths, which is a very big number, and talking about all the illicit reasons for the hosting. And we've made videos before about that the bidding process, and obviously we've touched on the reason why a place like Qatar, other than obviously just the joy of the football, would want to host a tournament like this. And there are lots of things to discuss essentially, but ultimately it kind of comes down to 2 different fundamental ways of viewing international cooperation. One of them being that sanctions are the right approach, and isolationism essentially is the right approach in order to force another people to change their mind, or cooperation is the right approach, and working with other countries, working with other people, closening ties, and I suppose exposing each other to different cultures is the better way of doing it. And there's sort of evidence on both sides. There are existing patterns on both sides right now. I think probably the best example of the sanctions is the US sanctions on Iran at the moment, which don't really seem to be working. I think it would be fair to say. I think there's also obviously an even better example will probably be North Korea. Who does it hurt? It hurts the people of North Korea. It doesn't particularly hurt the leadership. Those sanctions also don't really appear to work. I think there are probably more examples. I'm coming down on the side of international cooperation making sense. Not that I'm suggesting that we internationally cooperate with North Korea. Please don't read into what I'm saying. I'm not a foreign policy expert. I don't know what I'm talking about. But as a football fan who's read about this and who thinks about it, my opinion on Qatar hosting a football tournament,
be hot.
It's hot. But then I think the people who live in Qatar, I don't doubt that many of them love football, and having the World Cup hosted in Qatar is going to be an event of extreme pride for those people and extreme joy.
Well, they won the last Asian Cup as well, so they definitely have a team which
Sure.
can compete.
Yeah, and look, I think it's the population of Qatar is actually very small, and I think only 10% of those people are from the country, and 90% of the people who live there are migrant workers. But many of those people come from places where there's a traditional love for football too, and I think obviously it should go without saying that the way in which the stadiums and the infrastructure within the country generally has been built, and the circumstances in which many migrant workers are living and working is horrific. And the kafala sponsorship system generally is something I would consider to be archaic, and also provides those sort of horrific circumstances. There is a lot that is done in a way that I wouldn't do it, and I don't think you would see done in the UK or Australia or the United States. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that the people are bad people, and I think the people are going to be overjoyed that there's a World Cup taking place there. It's a very proud moment, as we can see from other host nations too. So, fuck, man, I don't know. Like, I think it really is. It really is. Like, I don't, and I think like it's the time for sort of any other approach than, all right, let's all be in it together, was 10 years ago, when there was an opportunity for the bid to be overturned as the result of any kind of potential alleged nefarious activity which took place within it, right? But now we're a year away. It's happening. I don't know. It just sucks that people had to die in order for it to happen.
Because they were all migrant workers. There was like words that like the migrant workers would come in, their passports would get taken away, and not a situation anyone like wants to be in. It's sucks.
No. Yeah, it sucks, and that's the nature of the kafala system of sponsorship, which operates across a lot of the Persian Gulf. It's something that those countries have promised reform regarding over the last sort of 5 years or so. I mean, the biggest positive argument for the World Cup taking place in Qatar is that the kafala system has existed for a long time. Nobody gave a shit about it before the World Cup was going there, right? And even if there are some minor, or some would argue like positive reforms in place in those countries to those sorts of systems, improvements to the life conditions or the living conditions of migrant workers who work there, if those exist, that is as a result of the international attention. That is as a direct result of the World Cup being hosted.
Yeah, the same can be said about like Saudi Arabia as well, with their like current prince. Like he's been a lot more progressive than like ones prior, like due to like the amount of like international like attention like now on these countries, which like it sucks.
Did also
that we
kill a journalist though.
Yeah.
he did have a journalist dismembered in the Turkish embassy. But sure. Cool guy, great guy.
Yeah.
I take your point. Like that there is this is the kind of international cooperation perspective, isn't it? Like it works in those two different ways, and because there is eyes on those nations, it is in their interests to work in a way in which would be happier, which would make people in the West happier, right? It suits Mohammed bin Salman to act in a way that that the people in the West will appreciate, because there is money to be made from doing that. It also killed the journalist, but sometimes you gotta kill journalists, haven't you? Sometimes they're getting all up in my business. I don't want this stuff.
Asking too many questions.
Who do you think you are? I'm gonna kill you.
It sucks as well. Moving on, before we got some Twitter questions.
I'm on holiday
as well. Who loves talking about killing journalists on their day off? Not me. Before we get to our Twitter questions, the Sokkah Podcast does have a Patreon account. You can support it for as little as $2 a month. which is a coffee a month. Yeah,
man.
Cheaper than the Athletic. Is it?
So cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
It's a great deal. You get exclusive benefits. You get the Discord chat, exclusive secret podcast with myself and Trent. But the most important benefit, this is for every single tier. So from $2 to $10, you can get your name read out on the podcast every episode. And today I've kindly asked Joe to read out the 22 names. So Joe, I'll do a drum roll.
I'm going to do it. You're going to drum roll the whole time? Oh, no, I'll drum roll up until I've... Oh, sorry, I've interrupted.
I can drum roll now and then...
Start again. Yeah. Edward Watson, Michael Swallow, Adrian Bonoza, Ben Miro, Neil Simmons, Dusty, that's a good one, Ryan Robinson, Milan Kusari, Oscar Brotherson, Andy Tin, John Morris, Harry Russell and a second Harry, 2 Harrys there. Dennis Fernandez, Ben Robson, Natasha Williams, Andrea, Jacob Colangelo, I assume.
Yep.
Jordan Waters, David Clark, Fraser Marnham. I prefer Marnham. Fraser Marnham. And Glenn Olivero. Thank you for being Patreons to the Sokkah Podcast.
Sokkah Pod. That's how you say it. Exactly. Perfect. During the week, we did our soccer Twitter. That's what Australian football, like the hashtag is called Soccer Twitter for some reason. Hence the podcast name. We just jumped on that. But our first question is from John, and he says, if Joe had to pick between Alex and Seb for the final spot of a five-a-side team, who would you pick and why?
Oh, I'm going to have to pick Alex because those listeners who listen to the Tifo podcast as well, they might think it's an odd pick because Alex seems to emit less energy than Seb, but physically, I would say he's more energetic than Seb is. Seb kind of reminds me of Snoopy a little bit, and a little bit. He's got a little bit of the Eeyores about him, Winnie the Pooh. That culture reference that crosses.
It does, yeah.
He's got a little bit of the Eeyores about him, and also Alex. Alex was a goalkeeper, but technically works for me, so has to do what I say. So if I tell him to get out of goal, so I can stand in,
so you're the
goal,
captain as well,
and relax, then he'll have to do that. So that's why I'd pick Alex probably.
Yeah. We have a question from Jack George, and he says, "What's the best analogy you've ever done?" Off memory.
I don't remember anything I say. I think the reason that those things. Well, this is it. Like they're sort of, and again, for listeners of probably lots of these answers are only going to matter to people who already know what Tifo is. But for listeners to the Tifo podcast, those things are meaningless and without value. So when they come to my mind and I say them, they leave immediately again afterwards. And often people tweet me in the week laughing at something, and I have to sort of check back to see what it even is.
Yeah, it's like exactly last week on the Tifo pod, you were talking about jam for a good 2 minutes. And
jam, yes, we were.
Yeah, because you
see that came of nothing because we do the intro, we record the
and
intro
you're
at the end of the
jam
podcast,
packed, and then you just went on a tangent, and I
think it's called verbal diarrhea, basically. And how many of us really inspect our own diarrhea? We don't. We just flush it away. It's not. Exactly. We know it's happened.
It's in and
we
out.
Look at it once and we say, okay, that's liquid. I'll just flush that away. We don't inspect it, do we? And so I don't inspect either. But thank you. Good question though.
Yeah, there was 2 other ones that I remember all of them. One was I think the Wolves striker, and you're like, he's a hot dog player because when he scores, he makes people want to go hot dog.
This is what I mean about the valueness. What does that mean? Why have you remembered that?
It's stuck in my head.
No, that's on you, man.
I took a screen recording of it, and it gets me every time. And another good one I saw on Twitter was the analogy you made of Sergio Busquets being like a wildebeest, and he saw Rome fall.
I've literally no memory of ever saying that. Was that in the Barcelona game when he was subbed off when they lost against PSG, wasn't it?
It could have been.
I remember talking about him then. There was just something about the way that he sat down after he'd been subbed off. I felt, again, there was a lot of... This is why I watch football, because there's a lot of...
Those moments like that, those obscure things that only one person sees.
Yeah, there was a lot in there. I enjoyed that.
Got a question from Football Shirt finds Australia. He says, "What's the earliest football memory and a favorite football memory as a fan that you have?"
Earliest football memory, I went to see Norwich, Leicester City. I guess it would have been at Carrow Road in Norwich, Norfolk, East Anglia, east of England. And we sat in the front row of the stadium. It's the only time I've ever done that in a stadium. And Dennis Wise was playing for Leicester at the time. Do you remember Dennis Wise?
I know this. I think I know the last name. I'm not sure if it's Dennis though that I'm thinking of.
So Dennis Wise, he's a bit before me as well, but he was kind of a sort of famous hard nut. He was quite a short man, but he was one of those players who, regardless of if you were a foot higher than him or not, you didn't fuck with Dennis Wise. He was kind of a frightening guy. He actually came into a pub that I worked in years later, and the way he stared, it was very pleasant, but he was scary. I think maybe just because of my association, nothing to do with him. But anyway, he the ball was sort of kicked over the touchline, and it came to me in the stands. And I would have been, I don't know, 10 years old or something. And I handed the ball back to the player who came over, and it was Dennis Wise. And he stared in my eyes like with this horror. I felt a real terror. And then he did the throw in. And I thought I'd made that up for a long time because I didn't think about it for years. And then years later, I thought I must have made that up. Like that didn't really happen. It turns out it was real. Dennis Wise did play for Leicester, and that's my earliest football memory. My favorite football memory, I don't know. As a fan,
What about the World Cup with England, like against Colombia?
Yeah, that was. I mean, that would be definitely. I'll do that one instead, but I'll tweak it as my favorite memory as a professional in whatever capacity.
Yeah.
Because Tifo was working through that World Cup, and that was a hell of a lot of fun. It was Alex and I and Philippe, who works for us now still as an illustrator, and we worked in a room above a pub pretty much every day for a month, watching all the football, recording the podcast, writing and making videos as we went. It was a lot of work, but it was extremely fun. And England's run, I was born in 1990, and so I come from a sort of a generation of people who've watched England through the golden generation, essentially miserably fail every single tournament. And there really was a sort of there was
really
a
hope for you guys
feeling,
that tournament.
There was hope, but within the country, there was no expectation, and that was the first time that I have ever experienced that. As an England fan, because even through the golden generation, even after sort of tournament defeat, there would still be hope, and I would say as all the way up to Euro 2016, which was hosted where?
Czech Republic?
France?
No. It was France? No.
France, wasn't it? Yeah, it was
I think
France.
Euro
I think it
12,
was
I think.
France.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, wherever the fuck it was, that was the one that we went out to Iceland, I think, and it was so despairing. All hope was gone, basically. So by the time 2018 came around, and Gareth Southgate was in charge, and
with his
waistcoat, a young team with his tight little waistcoats, there was sort of. There were the lowest expectations within the country that I've ever experienced going into a major tournament, and I think the players recognise that too.
I think freedom as well, I suppose, because there's no expectation, they can do whatever and play. Yeah, with a different.
I think
mindset.
so, and there's a history of the relationship between the British media and the England football team. There's always there's a sort of storied history between the media and the England captain, for example, as well. And I think for whatever reason, the pressure cooker was off in 2018. The players were younger. Many of them hadn't been at a tournament before. I love young players at a tournament because they don't have that instilled fear. They don't remember the last time they got kicked out and how bad it was. There's no trauma. They just gun it, And it was this sort of perfect combination. And I don't mind at all that we went out in the semis. I thought the Croatia team was great. France obviously deserved to win. It was fantastic to beat Colombia. I remember thinking particularly that game because England had been involved in some dirty games in the tournament. Like there was a lot of fouling going on, and you always feel more sort of justified in winning in the footballing way or whatever in difficult circumstances. So that is definitely a fond memory, and I was overtaken with excitement. My body danced. Joe. That's what I'm saying.
No, like just going back on your Norwich point at Wise with making like eye contact. I was in Torino watching the Juventus Atletico Madrid game. It's my first Champions League game. I was sitting like 8 rows back, and the ball got kicked out, and Mattia Di Cilio walked like to take like the throw-in, and for one split moment we just made eye contact, and that will just forever live with me for no reason.
That is cool, man. There's a power in the eyes, huh?
Yeah, and then now he plays somewhere in France, so all the best to him. Yeah, he'll always have that spot in my heart. It's not really questions. It's more a statement from Jersh, and he says,
Jersh.
Yeah, he says, just tell Joe I love him, and he's more than welcome to narrate my funeral, which I think is sweet.
That's lovely. Well, I hope you die soon, and I hope that you do leave some money in your will for my fee, because I don't work for free, by the way. Thank you, Josh.
Like his will just say, put it all in subscriptions for The Athletic, which is £1 a month.
No. That's it. Yeah, if you can get 100 people to subscribe to The Athletic, I will narrate your funeral. I don't hope you die soon. I hope you live a very long and happy life, because that's what you're supposed to say, isn't it, in public?
Yeah, that's it. We want to keep it all positive vibes here.
Yes.
I think, on that note, that's a good way to end this podcast. Joe Devine, thank you so much for coming on. I'm a massive fan. So this is, for me personally, it's just so cool to chat to you. Also, to speak to another Joe, I don't get to do that too often, which was a weird experience. But yeah.
Well, thanks to you, Joe. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Cool, too easy. I remember when I sent you the message on Twitter, you was like, I don't know anything about Australian football, but yeah, I convinced you to come on. And it was, I don't know how long it's gone for, but yeah, it was fun doing this, Joe. If the Sokkah Pod community wants to get in touch with your work, where can they find you?
If they go to YouTube and they search for Tifo or Tifo football, they'll find the stuff there, or Tifo podcast, they'll find us there too. Or of course, if they visit theathletic.com/Tifo, they can subscribe to The Athletic for probably £1 a week. I don't know what the current deal is. I'm on holiday, but it'll be a good one for lots of good journalism. Joe.
Yep, cool. And I think on that note, thanks so much, guys, for listening, especially if you got this far in the pod. Like, comment, subscribe. I need to say that at the start of the videos, not the very last bit. But yeah, too late now anyway.
You're in charge. You can edit yourself to be at the beginning saying that.
I never thought, I've done this for a year and a half. I've never thought of doing that. Yeah.
Do it right now.
Yeah, it might look a bit disjointed, but who cares?
No, it'll be fine.
I think, we'll leave it at that. Joe, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your morning. Yes, say hi to your neighbor for me. Make sure he gets that vaccine.
Will do. Thanks, Joe.